Barely 3 weeks after a 30-ton capacity cooking gas tanker exploded in the Ijushaga area of Lagos, critically injuring over 30 people and destroying 23 buildings, an early morning gas explosion yesterday rocked Baruwa, another densely populated part of Lagos, killing 5 persons and 8 others with varying degrees of injury. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation have expressed deep sorrow over the incident. The governor described the incident as a sad memory in the life of his administration and blamed the negligence on the part of the gas plant operators for the explosion. Preliminary assessment of the incident put the damage at 89 shops, 44 buildings, and including a church, school, and event center, 23 electric poles, 2 transformers, gas tankers, and 1 tricycle and 1 motorcycle. According to an eyewitness account, the fire started when the tanker, being offloaded of its content at the petrol station, exploded. Very, very disturbing scenes. One too many. In fact, the question I should ask is, when are we going to have the next tanker explosion?
And it's not an unreasonable question because these incidents are happening in quick succession. And yes, the governor has blamed negligence, but who is being held accountable for this negligence? We've discussed this too many times on this show. It is criminal negligence at this point. The last one we discussed was a faulty valve, which was also blamed on somebody's negligence. There was an issue with brakes in the previous incident, and now this one. If you look at the footage of the area where it occurred, what was that gas plant doing in that area? Such a densely populated residential area, and now 5 people are dead. 5 others are in critical condition, and there are 3 others who are injured, but not critical. It's unfair. People expect more than this from our government. There have to be regulators who are doing their jobs, who are prosecuting everybody responsible to serve as a deterrent from this kind of criminal activity, because it is criminal.
Well, this is the 3rd major incident of gas explosion in Lagos this year. The first major one was in Abiola, which was just as devastating when the gas pipeline exploded. At the time, yes, government showed empathy. We were told that persons who lost buildings would be assisted. A whole school that was lost in the course of that incident, we were told will be rebuilt. But the incident occurred. Up to this moment, we have no update. Now, the second major one was 3 weeks ago at Ijushaga, where 30 buildings, more than 30 buildings were destroyed. Over 30 persons were injured. They ended up in the hospital. At the time, again, government said, oh, they responded quickly. And that was how they were able to manage the situation. This latest one was in Ipaja, in Baruwa. We reported it yesterday as breaking news. And if you look at the scope of the devastation, 89 shops, 44 buildings, event center, and then so many people are also in hospital who are suffering various degrees of burns. And the best that we could get from the NNPC is to say, well, they are expressing deep sorrow. Now, these condolence messages are no longer beginning to make sense. The Lagos State the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency said they were there on time, and the policemen also got there on time, that after putting out the primary leakage, the secondary leakage, they were also able to stop it. I think we should be getting tired now of commending the emergency agencies for getting to the scene of these incidents swiftly. I think we should be talking more about, 1, precautionary and prevention measures. Many of these gas plant stations are located in densely populated areas, as Tundun pointed out, and that in itself, poses a very serious risk. And if you look at many of these gas plant stations and even petrol stations, they do not follow basic security procedures. In this latest incident in Baruwa, we were told that there was a cooking gas tanker that was dispensing gas. The generator was on. The station was also selling at that particular hour, very early in the morning. Now, what kind of precautions should they have taken that they did not take? The state governor says that this is a case of negligence. Now, what is the nature of that negligence? Nobody has told us. How can that negligence be prevented in some other locations at another time? And when there is negligence, who gets punished for it? Because these gas plant operators, they really don't care. In fact, there was a 4th incident this year in Isolo. You remember, but that had to do with a shop where somebody had gone to buy a gas and then a gas cylinder to refill a gas cylinder, and there was something wrong with the gas cylinder, and a number of shops were also razed down. So that's like 4 major incidents relating to gas. And we know that gas is inflammable material. In fact, somebody is also saying there was Papa Ajao. Yeah. Oh, it's not Isolo?
No, it was Papa.
Okay, but I mean, you have these incidents, occurring again and again. So people have to be punished to serve as deterrents. Yeah. That, I think, is the only solution. And from an urban planning perspective, something has to be done about the location of many of these stations selling inflammable and deadly material. I cited the example of one particular petrol station that has a hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Just upstairs.
We know that.
So you have that petrol station downstairs. I think they also sell gas. Yeah. And then people check into the hotel and they feel safe. Yeah. So this is the kind of tragedy that we face here. And I think that it's a planning problem. It's a urban development problem. And government officials have shed their tears too many times.
Yeah. Dr. Abati, since the last time we spoke about that hotel, I would have thought they would have taken a cue and even go do something about that. I drove past there the other day. The hotel is still there, flourishing. And it's been there for so many years on top of a filling station. You see, I'm not shocked. It will happen again. I'm not being very judgmental or sounding very sarcastic.
It's just a fact.
But it's just a fact. Dr. Abati, we've said all this morning. I can bet you nothing will be done as regards all we have said this morning. They will move on. We'll just hear, oh, it's a sorrowful incident. We will reimburse the people that have lost their lives and their shops and everything. Nothing will be done. We'll move on. When the next one happens, we'll talk about it. It's a systemic problem. I'm tired and sick and talking about this. You remember when this happened? When the last one happened 3 weeks ago, that was around the same time too. We had a tanker incident in Kogi that killed a lot of children. Yeah. That were all crying foul. They said they will look into it. Nothing has been done.
But you know what underpins all that?
That's why I asked the question, when will the next one happen?
What underpins all that is just a fundamental lack of respect for our lives.
Yes.
That is the bottom line.
Oh, yes.
And that's why civil society must not give up.
Yes.
And that civil society, of course, includes the media.
Yes.
And we too cannot get tired.
Yes.
We have to continue to draw attention to basic principles about safety of human lives and also of property in terms of how our society is organized. I mean, look at even the market fires. Maybe because of the rainy season, that's why we've not had a lot of market fires. You see, when it is the dry season now, we may move from gas tanker explosion to this fire has gone up in flames. That fire, this market has gone up in flames. Another market, because we don't take precautions. There is a building code also in this country.
Well, do we use that?
But that building code, nobody pays attention to.
Yes.
You go to public buildings, there's only one exit.
Yes.
Many buildings in Nigeria, nobody enforces the regulation with regard to exits and entrances and fire drills.
Yeah.
And yet, our leaders, the first thing they do when they get into public offices to say, oh, they are going abroad to go and see how, government is organized in other parts of the world. Now, I don't see anybody learning anything from those expensive trips. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they are not doing enough in terms of applying what they enjoy overseas. We had Dele Farutimi here the other day. He said many Nigerians, when they come back from overseas and they've had fun, they've enjoyed, they've observed a lot, when they get to the Murtala Mohammed Airport, they remove their brains and put inside their bags. Now, that may be quite an extremist thing, but the point we're making is that we're not seeing a lot of creativity, a lot of quality thinking, applied.
No, all we hear is
figures.
It's that fundamental fact of their lives abroad matter over there. Yes. I go abroad, I see how people live, how the state respects the citizens, yes. And I come back here, it does not enter my mind yes. that the same thing should apply to Nigerians. Yes. Nigerians are exempt from basic dignity, yes. basic respect. There is a thinking that a lot of our leaders have towards us that we are actual trash, quite frankly. They don't care.
I've heard this argument that shocked me that we're over 200 million. If 5 people just die, it's nothing.
So what? Yes, they don't care.
That's where the problem. That's why it looks as though I was sounding sarcastic. Dr. Abati will just speak. We'll keep speaking. But I can bet you nothing will be done. A great example we have given down is that impending ticking time bomb you talked about the hotel now. You see, nothing will be done. How can such a thing
be allowed?
Nothing will be done.
And look at these homes as well. Structural integrity is a complete... Structural integrity of certain buildings is obvious. It's lacking, and they don't pull them down. There's nothing.
Wait for the dry season, when there will be fires in markets, and there will be bushfires.
Okay. How many market drills have the market government built? How many market drills have we seen there? How many market drills, fire drills have we seen in Tundun?
And come election time, they go to the market people and solicit their votes. It's sickening.
Usual. All right, that's all on Headline News. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, and Aron to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Our dependable Rotus, Oddiri. Rotus, great to have you.
Thank you.
Don't let me call you that private name I called you.
Rufai, good morning. Tundu, good morning. And Doctor, good morning as well.
Good morning.
So we kick things off with President Buhari's budget presentation from yesterday. For folks that listened to him, one of the ominous messages that he had during his presentation to the National Assembly was that the third quarter of the year is likely to see a recession. I mean, he said this as he was, presenting the budget to lawmakers. Again, 13.08 trillion naira expenditure, revenues of only about 7.8 trillion naira. You've got a deficit of about 5.6 trillion. Lawmakers have already approved borrowing of another 4.8 trillion, about $11 billion, in order to plug the deficit. So, if there's one thing that can be said for this administration, at least so far in economic terms, if you look at what the comments from the CBN Governor Wefele, comments from the Minister of Finance, and now from the President himself, is that the third quarter is likely to see another contraction like we did in the second quarter of the year. So it's imperative that the capital projects that are, at least the outlays for capital projects in the budget, it's important that they are completed, because as I was, as we were speaking with on Newsday yesterday, right as he completed his budget presentation, that's the only way the common man is going to feel anything that is in this budget. I gave an example of a bridge that Ambode, former governor of Lagos State, a Jubilee bridge over in Ajah, used to be just a roundabout that used to cause a lot of traffic. They built a bridge there. It reduced commuting time drastically, to where you could it's a flyover bridge essentially. So I just gave that as an example of infrastructure that makes the lives of people a whole lot easier. But very appreciative that the president in his address to lawmakers said, look, third quarter, and of course, a recession is defined as 2 consecutive negative quarters. And he said, yeah, the third quarter, we might see another contraction, essentially confirming that there could be a likely recession. So again, budget cycle, the cycle now January through to December, as Ahmad Lawan, Senate President, said yesterday, that's been put in place so that, this can be, a quick passage can be put through. And, we hope that it's passed quickly into law and then implemented as quickly as possible. But the key takeaway there, at least of everything the President said, is that, we're likely to see a contraction. We expect those figures on the Bureau of Statistics either later this month or early next month. To the Central Bank of Nigeria is warning that people should be on the lookout for fraudulent loan and investment schemes to be purported to be from the bank. As you know, the central bank is doing quite a lot in, agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare. In fact, the president yesterday mentioned a litany of intervention schemes that the central bank is involved in order to stimulate aggregate demand and jumpstart the economy to get us back to a road to recovery. But in line with that, seeing as the central bank is, the healthcare facilities, manufacturing facilities, SME facilities, facilities here and there, it's likely that unscrupulous folks will want to send offers in their name in order to dupe people. So, it's in our sister publication today's This Day. You can take a look at this. So the central bank is trying to get ahead of it and saying, look, we have a lot of intervention schemes, but in no at no point do we try to engage anyone directly. You know, all these intervention schemes go through, you know, the deposit money banks and the intervention setups that the central bank has. So, you know, if anyone is trying to reach out to you directly saying come and take a loan from the CBN or anything like that, you have to be on your guard. So it's a good, you know, in where we are right now in the country, disposable incomes reduced, jobs being cut, people are looking for loans. We saw those stats from the Bureau of Statistics with their COVID-19 survey that they took out on households, how more people are borrowing money for foodstuff and so on. So people need money, you know, it's a tough period. So the CBN is just saying, please be on your guard and please be careful with regards to these fraudulent loan and investment schemes. Over to the World Trade Organization, they finally confirmed something that, you know, our sister publication This Day, Bloomberg, Financial Times have reported that Miu Young-hee and Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala are indeed the Director General finalists. The final two, they are at the finals now for the Director General position. There were a few fake publications, or rather, maybe I don't know if I call them fake, but they were jumping the gun, saying that Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala had already been picked, which prompted her media advisor to send out a quick press release telling people that, look, you know, she hasn't been picked yet, although she has been confirmed as a finalist along with South Korea's Trade Minister Miu Young-hee. So don't jump the gun. The announcement will be made I believe November, first week of or second week of November. So, you know, fingers crossed that she gets picked. But she, just to clear the air, she has not been picked. You are looking at the two finalists now for the Director General position at the World Trade Organization. And again, whoever gets this job, Michael Wilson and I were talking about this yesterday. When it comes to trade, they've got whoever gets the job. Good luck to them, because it's going to be a tough waters ahead. But they are both very qualified, and whoever it is probably going to be very capable of handling what comes to them as far as trade, bilateral and multilateral trade is concerned. Finally, Thrive Agric. There's been some leadership changes at Thrive Agric. Ukaeje is the current CEO. He's stepping down. That's him right there. And Adia So, former MD at MyGo, which is a company that's involved in learning through algorithms. I said learning, lending through algorithms. She's now the interim CEO at Thrive Agric. You know, there've been some issues. You know, they're an agri-tech platform. He put out some tweets, you know, announcing to the public that she is going to be taking over and he is going to be stepping down. She's going to try and right the ship. Yeah, they're the tweets from Ukaeje to the public saying that, okay. Oh, he also thanked Ventures Platform. They're a platform that Thrive Agric is one of their portfolio companies, and so they've been assisting them in trying to get things together. They blamed, you know, COVID-19 for disrupting the off-takers that are supposed to be buying off their agric produce and selling them to the end users. But there have been issues. So essentially, there's been management change over at Thrive Agric right now. Adia So is going to try and right the ship. Try to get her to get on the Global Business Report, hopefully to talk about these things in the near term. But right now, she wants to focus on trying to get these payments out that are outstanding to investors before talking to the media. And that's our update.
Let me start with Thrive Agric. How is this different from what you reported earlier about Health Plus and some of those other companies? Is it Waka now?
You're right.
You know, that had problems with venture capital investors, because there is a venture capital platform that we understand is involved in this.
Yes.
And now they've also appointed the chief financial officer.
Yes.
What kind of difference would that make? Is this not just window dressing, just to you know, reassure investors who say their payouts have been delayed and that they've put their money in what is a bad business, or at best a Ponzi scheme? Now, as for the budget, yes, we now have the details, but the last time I asked you, are the estimates not too optimistic? The government says it's budget of economic recovery and resilience, but the PDP, the National Assembly, is already divided on this. The PDP is saying those estimates are stale and uninspiring. And you went through the figures before on this program. As for the CBN, I think the CBN should do a lot more in terms of communication and public enlightenment. When those financial intervention programs were announced, XMEs got really interested. But, you know, they then discovered that there are a lot of middlemen out there who offer advice, who say you will pay a certain amount of money. And that has been going on for months, since CBN announced the first intervention package. Now, shouldn't there be sanctions for such, you know, speculators, self-appointed middlemen, to protect the average Nigerian, who I think, makes the mistake that the CBN has now identified, because the CBN itself has not provided enough enlightenment about those intervention programs.
Indeed, excellent points, Doctor. Yeah, so first of all, for Thrive Agri, the difference between them and Health Plus was dealing with a foreign private equity firm. So that private equity firm gave them about $10 million, part of an $18 million investment. They gave them metrics that they were supposed to meet, key performance indicators. They didn't meet them, and they removed the CEO, and that now caused the back and forth between them. So that was a foreign private equity firm. For Thrive Agri, Ventures platform is Nigerian-owned. They are based here in Nigeria, and the relationship is very cordial. So the Ventures platform put out a press release saying that, look, we are working with Thrive Agri, we are advising them on how to right the ship, and this appointment of a DSO is part of the advice that Ventures platform has been giving to them. So they assisted them in getting her to take over. So there's no rancorous relationship between them. Now, the difference between these, what Thrive Agri is doing, they haven't promised any astronomical returns like some of the other platforms that we've highlighted. Although, with them coming out and saying that you're going to have to wait 12 months to 24 months to get back your investment, and is in line with whoever invested first. So if you, Doctor, invested first, then Tundun invested next, then Rufai invested third, the paybacks will be in that order, where Doctor, you'll be paid back first, Tundun next, and then Rufai. So some folks are saying that, well, that's a little questionable. Again, we'll get the CEO on the show, and we'll get them to clarify. On the budget, you're correct. GDP growth in 2021 of between 3 to 5%. Where is that going to come from? Inflation of 11.59. Those estimates are indeed rose, and yes, the CBN does have to do more in fight of enlightenment.
Okay, Rotus, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Moving on now to business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Great to have you, Michael.
Morning, yeah, a very cautious one really as far as Asia's concerned. That's pretty unsurprising given that the world's financial markets seem to be held hostage by the randomness of President Trump's Twitter account, which is a very odd way of running things, but that's the kind of life we live. And things are likely to get even more unsettled over the next few weeks as we head towards the US elections. However, China's back, and my goodness, is it back? Equities playing catch up this morning, but they're private industry PMI data shows that a rapid climb as far as optimism in China is concerned. So it's an 8-day holiday that it's been on. It is the world's second largest economy. And that Caixin Services PMI, that's the private one, the one that I mentioned, showed a rise of the 5th straight month. And it shows that China is actually recovering very, very strongly from the pandemic, boosted, number one, by exports, which we've talked about before, but more importantly, their domestic market appears to be growing. The Chinese currency, the renminbi or the yuan, depending on what you want to call it, rose the most in 2.5 years. It's now at 6.7 to the dollar. By contrast, the world's 4th largest economy, that of Japan, Japanese household spending rose very, very little, and household spending, in fact, has been steady for about a year. So basically, their domestic demand, not much. So let's do a recap of what happened yesterday. The prospect of this coronavirus stimulus package is shrouded in mystery, quite honestly. I mean, it seemed as though President Trump on Tuesday had changed his mind about it. He actually targeted airlines, possibly, and a one-off payment to US citizens. Shortly before that, Nancy Pelosi, head of the House Speaker, yesterday was saying that there should be no special relief programs for particular sectors. It should be all-encompassing. For briefly, that pushed the Dow down a bit. And I can add to that the airline thing is actually is much more serious than you would have thought. The CEO of Qatar Airways, and obviously we've seen how the balance of airways has actually moved to those kind of Middle Eastern hubs. 43 commercial airlines have already folded so far this year. 485 planes are biding their own time in a desert somewhere. They've been idled. And the International Air Transport Association, IATA, says that the industry will burn through $77 billion in cash. That's their estimate for the second half of 2020. So a lot of usual kind of questions about the US and also about European markets. Here, the UK economy expanded only by 2.1%. 3.1%. In August, way below expectations. The real picture will come when we get the September and October figures in a couple of months' time, finally, and I think they will confirm that our economy is slowing dramatically. Tens of thousands of UK businesses are not ready for Brexit. The Dover-Calais crossing, you know, that one between continental Europe and the British Isles, they're expecting chaos there, even though they have unveiled plans for 10 inland border controls to help customs actually get these things through and take the strain off the ports. Commodities, weather and strike. Well, weather, first of all, that you know about, impending Hurricane Delta in the Gulf, and a strike of Norwegian oil workers pushed it slightly higher, but again, that will only be a temporary rise. Gold modestly up, given the problems, given the uncertainties, and so on, and also China back. China tends to buy gold. Generally speaking, though, stocks are steaming ahead. I think when we begin, if we may, to look at this, you know, in December, we'll be looking back at a 2020 that actually showed a clear division between Wall Street and Main Street, quite extraordinary. And it looks like even if Joe Biden gets in, which looks likely at the moment, as far as the polls are saying, it'll be very favourable for the markets given the big spend of infrastructure. Now, Doctor, good morning to you. You asked me yesterday. Good morning. You asked me about the survival of the City of London. And here's the thing. So I looked into it yesterday in a bit more detail, and what we're seeing is there's a lot of the companies themselves are actually divesting themselves of office space, and more people will be working from home. That's a given. But that, of course, you could apply to any capital in the world, couldn't you? So therefore, you've got this prospect of maybe a virtual market continuing with office space actually diminishing. Will the City of London survive? I suspect it probably will, and here are the reasons why. Number one, whatever you feel about it and whatever money laundering scandals occasionally arise and all the rest of it, the corporate stability of the City of London is something which people actually do tend to go to, including from your own country, when they want to actually raise money and participate in the financial markets. Could those skills be portable? Yes, of course they could. Would people actually want to follow those skills? I mean, we've heard a lot about, haven't we, from, as you said yesterday, the major banks saying that we have transported staff to other places within the EU. Well, I have to say, yeah, I'm sure they have, and I'm sure they've got plans for that, but that's exactly the kind of thing that I would be saying to my shareholders, because I'm just hedging my bets. It's a perfectly natural reaction. Will the centre of gravity shift from the City of London? I doubt it very much indeed. Will the City of London be slightly smaller? Possibly. But as I say, I feel as though that particular hub of expertise will remain in this country.
Okay, but Michael, you know very well that there's a big difference between the City of London and London itself. So will London itself survive economically when Brexit happens? I'm not talking about the City of London now.
Yeah, okay. So London itself, the area of Greater London, if you like, and the West End and all the rest of it, and the usual tourist spots, I think that will be very difficult indeed. I have no idea how that's going to pan out. We're seeing further lockdowns. The lockdown in London is a possibility. It's certainly happening in the north of England. I feel as though if it does, then those service industries, and a huge amount of our economy depends upon service industries, and a lot of those in London, restaurants, clubs, and all the rest of it, which you know very well, will suffer. It'll be like, as somebody put it this morning, a guillotine coming down. They've done actually quite well coping with the lockdown, and then the freedom from lockdown, and then a further lockdown, and so on. It requires some very, very careful thought about this. And I think, once again, I do feel as though we're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, basically, in lots of these things. I feel as though the politicians are actually running scared of this virus, instead of saying, look, what we need to do, and it's happened in South Africa, hasn't it, actually, if you believe the figures from there. The Western Cape has achieved some kind of herd immunity. Painful, but it has actually achieved it. I'll tell you a little story. When I was a kid, my mum used to send me to school to actually catch things like mumps and chicken pox and all those diseases that run through children, so that you would have them at a young age, and in older life, you'd be immune from them. That's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great thought. Thank you so much. Speaking of mumps and immunity, what a great way to talk to Mr. Immunity himself, maybe Mr. Regeneron, I should call him, Aron Akerejola. Great to have you. Aron.
Hey, Rufai, how you doing today? Good morning to you, Doctor.
Aron the Baron. Tundun is here today.
All right, Tundun.
Please,
We're solid.
Go, Aron. Come on,
No,
go.
I want to hear him, please.
Yeah, do your shot, Aron. Do it. Throw it.
Okay, without a doubt, let's get straight into some of the numbers today. Looking at the graph.
Ignore them. Let's just get into the stories.
Okay, getting into the stories today. Let's actually start it off from the global outlook on COVID-19. Globally at the moment, we're seeing the numbers still actually skyrocket. 36.5 million right now, plus confirmed cases of COVID-19 across 188 regions and countries around the world. Still over 1 million deaths at the moment, to be precise, 1,062,031 deaths at the moment of COVID-19. Looking at helping us with the graph there, looking at the graphs, we can actually see the projection, the progressions there, and sadly so, we can actually see that there is a rise. As a matter of fact, the WHO said that there was a one-day spike, which actually represented that 8% we're actually seeing there. 359,173 was what was recorded globally yesterday from the data that was being collected by the Johns Hopkins University, and the deaths are also up by 6%, over 6,230. Now, we'll be talking about Nigeria in a moment, because, well, okay, since we're there, let's even talk about Nigeria, because if you look at how things are actually playing out in Nigeria, from what is coming out from the NCDC, we got to find out that that things are looking way better for Nigeria in terms of COVID-19 deaths. Understanding that if they can actually help us with the NCDC summary, it's very, very clear that clearly looking at how things are actually playing out at the moment, we are recording the numbers without a doubt, but the deaths have been stagnant literally all week. 1,113 has been the number that has been on board for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. At the moment, we've not seen, certainly Friday figures haven't come in. Will be coming in later on tonight, but we've not seen any deaths added to what we actually have right now, which is a very good thing, and at least we're doing this. Although in the PTF meeting, in the PTF briefing done yesterday, there were still talks about testing, and there were talks that people, the passion to test has actually gone extremely low, and is even going even lower at the moment, and it's still worrying, understanding that now flights are beginning to come in and out, and not only that, schools have reopened, the economy seems to be opening almost fully, and we're not seeing the number of people coming out to test. So if this does not happen, how do we even know the actual number of people who have the infections, which is rather unfortunate. Let's cross over to the US, as President Donald Trump, I must actually say, is talking about resuming fully on the campaign trail and also hitting Florida tomorrow night. Whether that will actually pan out is left to be seen, but at the moment his doctors are giving him a clean bill of health. We know in the US there are still over 7.6 million confirmed cases and adding, and at the moment Dr. Sean Conley actually put out a memo and said that President Donald Trump is fit to go. And initially he said that Donald Trump might be able to get back to public life and public work by Monday. He's backtracked and said that as early as tomorrow he can actually get back to public life. According to the CDC, they say if you, from the day of infection to till the next 10 days, you are not to be around people. You are to, as much as possible, try to stay away from people, because after 10 days you'll be less susceptible to spreading the virus like within that particular 10 days. But unfortunately, just some hours like this last week Friday was when the news actually came out that President Donald Trump had gone down with the virus. So this is not up to 10 days yet, and people are beginning to question, and some are even questioning not just what is happening, but also the corpus mentis of the president at the moment. But more news is coming on the president and the drug he used at the Walter Reed Hospital to get well, and we are now finding more about that particular drug, the Regeneron drug that we've been speaking about. And the drug is a molecular antibody cocktail, which is actually the stem cells used to make the drug, the HAK293T, is actually gotten from the embryonic kidney of an elective abortion. This practice actually started back in the 1970s in the Netherlands, and that is what Regeneron are using for their antibody drugs. And for a man who has been kicking against abortion, people are saying this is a massive, massive paradox.
I'm not Not really, because however way you want to slice it, you can't really go too deep into the ethics of scientific research. If you do, you might lose your lunch. I mean, Nigeria recently celebrated our polio-free status. How was that achieved? Using fetal kidney cells from 2 abortions in the 1960s. That is how the polio vaccine was developed in the first case. And it goes on and on. Your chickenpox vaccine, we roll up our sleeves and get these jabs. Do we know what's in the jabs? 5 of the COVID vaccines that have been developed are using aborted fetus cells at the moment. That's just the fact of the matter. It's the same thing that you had. Did you ever read that book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, that was made into a movie? This lady who died many years ago because her cells were found to be immortal. She was used for scientific experiments long after she was dead. Her family was never told. When we look into the medication that we swallow, the jabs that we take, if we know the backstory, it's quite sickening, actually.
I hope the evangelicals are watching and the, and the evangelicals are hearing this.
No, they must be listening. Look, Tundun, I think the problem here is the irony. You know, because the Republicans and the evangelicals that you refer to, they've been very strong on the issues of ethics and conscience, because the Republicans in this campaign have also been anti-abortion. And the Trump administration has reduced funding for stem cell research or research into fetal tissue, just for evangelical reasons. And now, most ironically, the one of the monoclonal drugs from Regeneron that was used to get him to where he is now, and he says it's a blessing from God, and that God has used him as a vehicle, is from an elective abortion.
This is the my point is that all of us, evangelical or otherwise, all of us, Rufai, the point is that all of us, evangelical or otherwise, we have benefited from these abortions. We have all been vaccinated at some point in our lives. So beyond the Trump issue, it's just the general point of these knee-jerk reactions that we have. Talking about Planned Parenthood, you recall during the last elections in the U.S., Planned Parenthood came under a lot of fire for how they allow medical science to use aborted fetuses. But the fact is that we all benefit in some way or another. A lot of the drugs that we take that's the research behind them.
So
this
what
is the
are we
thing.
dealing
So where
with
do you draw the line?
Hypocrisy?
This is it.
So your point is you are dealing with hypocrisy.
Yes. Beyond this issue, it's a larger issue.
In fact, some people, I'm sure you know those religions, say, don't take blood transfusion.
Yes.
They said it's not in tandem with the religion. You know, I keep saying that the American, and mark my word, the American Christian evangelicals, I'm sorry to say this with the deepest form of respect, are largely very big hypocrites. And I'm sorry to say
but Rufai, the point is this. If the trade secrets, like Tunde has been alluding to, is actually being let out, then probably we might cringe. We might cringe at how far science actually goes in getting stuff out.
You're correct, Tundu, but I'm sure they will have advised him that this is monoclonal antibody taken from this source. Would Trump rather lose his life or to steal with ethics?
No, I could actually bet that I'm sure he might not have known the actual details.
He might have, though, because you recall that Trump said on Howard Stern's radio show in public that he asked Marla Maples, his second wife, to abort Tiffany Trump. So Trump was never anti-abortion until he came on this platform. But I don't really want to reduce the conversation to Trump, just about medical science and the ethics is what I'm interested in.
Thanks so much. But let the point be made that no drug has been found as a cure for COVID-19 yet.
At the moment, regardless of what President Donald Trump is saying, no drug has been.
And kindly note that he never used hydrochloroquine for his treatment.
And that was a lie too.